In terms of turbulence, well, you talk about turbulence. I don't feel so much turbulence this time round for this iteration of budget, what we're now calling Budget 3.0, simply because there seems to have been wide and far consultation by the National Treasury in terms of this budget, which is why we've even heard the Deputy Finance Minister, David Masondo, say that he doesn't expect that there'll be a Budget 4.0, that there's an expectation that indeed this budget will be able to get over the political accepted line. Well, to discuss matters further, I am joined by Dr. Dumisani Jantjies. He's the director at the Parliamentary Budget Office, and he's going to give us some insights. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. So now, the PBO, the Parliamentary Budget Office, is a creature of statute. I need to read this. The Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act. Just tell us about the function of the PBO and how, during this very difficult year in terms of the budget process, you've managed to lend support to Parliament and also, how to take things forward.
Thank you so much for the opportunity once more. I think, yes, Parliamentary Budget Office, we have been able to be instrumental in supporting Parliament. We were established precisely to advise Parliament on budgetary matters. But our role really, we see it as trying to provide insights that let Parliament know what are some of the likely impact of the budget, particularly when we look at economic growth, employment, and also how it likes to impact society. And in particular, one of the issues that we raise is the implication for public finance itself. What is the budget likely to be? And we're created largely to advise Parliament on some of the issues. I think there's been a very good learning curve for the past few months for everybody. And I think, in my view, our role has been quite instrumental, because what we did during the time, we let Parliament know what are some of the implications of including the process, what needs to be taken into account. And we feel good that some of the matters we raised were taken on board by Parliament. And ultimately, the decisions of what happens lies with the House of Parliament. But they rely on our insight in that regard. Yeah.
So hopefully at 2 o'clock today, the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will deliver the budget. Now, assuming that, as the Deputy Finance Minister David Masondo suggested, that this budget is going to easily go over the line, what happens henceforth, and especially in terms of timelines, because everything is now behind time in terms of budgets, for the provinces, the municipalities, etc., etc. What happens henceforth?
It seems like you're correct. There's probably a shorter time compared to what happens if it's done in February. But when you look at the program that was set out a few weeks ago, we still have until the end of July, generally, to process the budget as a whole. But there are different instruments. Normal process will follow. We'll have fiscal framework taken into account by both finance committees of both houses, division of revenue and appropriations bill, but also the votes by different departments will come into effect. But all the process in terms of law will be followed, having public participation, having input from different sectors of society, and that ultimately has to finalize by Parliament debating and accepting the reports coming from those processes. So yes, I think it is a tight, but it seems to me that there's enough time, given that you have until end of July to process. So normal process will follow, just that there will be just more tighter time in that regard.
There's been some intimation that as a result of the tabling of a new budget for 2025, a national budget, that it means that provincial governments will also then now have to retable their budgets. Is that the case?
I think there's a new grounds for all people, but as soon as the changes happen that impact the provinces, that would also mean that some of the adjustment will have to be made at the provincial level. But I think, remember also, the province have their own statute as well that guides their process of budgets. But obviously, if what is tabled today impacts them, that would mean some way the province have to take it into account, that it means revising some of the proposals they've made or adjusting it over the time. Because remember, the second stage of the budget, it's with adjustments later in the year in the midterm budget. So there's quite space to actually make the changes. But yes, that will have impact on province as well. Because remember, the budget includes division of revenue, which its direct impact on the provinces itself. spending and other income perspective in that regard. Yeah.
Now, I know you're a technical guy, and the PBO holds itself as a very independent office in its work. But just as a professional person who's worked in this space for a number of years, having worked under a majority ANC government for a long time and now under the new sort of dispensation of national coalition politics, what lessons do you think can be drawn from the fiasco that we've seen in terms of the budgetary process this year, especially around the issue of consultation, so that everybody's on the same page and remembering that ultimately that budgets are to be delivered for the South African nation as a whole?
Sure, absolutely. It's a different time for a lot of us, or everybody. But I think it's always good to separate the process, the executive process and the legislative process. And I think for me, this learning over the past few months has reinforced the role of Parliament to know the Parliament has an ultimate say in what happens. And even if you have differences in different government entities or what have you, at the ultimate end, this was just a reminder or reinforce that Parliament has the ultimate say. And hence we had debates to say what should have happened earlier on and so on. But this is a reinforcement. That's why last week when I was speaking to one of the colleagues to say, look, well, in agreeing with the Deputy Minister of Finance, in my view, Parliament has more authority to actually decide whether there is fourth or no fourth budgets. And I'm quite confident that this time around, Parliament will reinforce its role and its purpose in regard. And because South Africans are actually expecting so much from Parliament, and in my view, there's a good opportunity. And that's learning, I could say, it was just to reinforce the roles of different governments. There's executive, there's legislature. And doesn't necessarily mean when it's done in executive, it's done in Parliament. It means it's a new process altogether. And that's what we'll see from tomorrow. It's a new process altogether that takes on.
Dr. Dumisani Jantjies, thank you so much, sir, for your time and insights there. He's the director at the Parliamentary Budget Office.